Welcome to South of Left Field. My name is Jimmy. And rather than do the usual politically directed consideration, I want to touch on something that has been very much on the minds of many people, clearly on my mind for this whole week. And in this case, I'll sum it up in one word: racism. Now, I'm the product of my upbringing. What does this mean? Growing up in the rural South, there is elements of racism and elements of homophobia that are woven into every fiber of my being. A significant part of my life has been doing the best I can on a personal level to unwind these things. What I have found in struggling to do this, in trying to be as aware as I can, that it is a lifelong project that'll never be completed, is that to be in any way successful in trying to first see, then accept, and then begin to change, you need knowledge. You need awareness. You need a window into the world beyond yourself. Now, we see the racism that's around us today. We see it in the streets. We see it in the debates. And my wife expressed a heartfelt hope, and I had to echo this. It hadn't crossed my mind until she mentioned it, that things such as bringing down statues and changing the names of military bases and things like this, I mean, okay, that's kind of nice. It's a symbol. But the thing is, we've been through revisions of symbols. We've been through periods of conflict. We've been through the struggle to move away from racism and prejudices through pretty much the entire history of the United States of America. It's been a thing that has, on some level, occupied my entire life. And, you know, I'm working towards 7 decades, closing in on it. So, education. That's what I think is an area that would be extremely controversial. But I would like to put some thoughts out there, put a bug in your ear, and point out that it really wasn't for myself until I got out of the environment in which I was raised and began to see other areas, other societies, other structures, other information, other history. It wasn't until the horizon of knowledge that I was gradually taking in began to grow that I was beginning to be able to see the fallacies that I had been raised in. The antebellum South was not some glorious society. The war in the Civil War was not fought over states' rights. You know, lies. I recently saw an article on phys.org. That's an organization whose site I like to go to for scientific articles, and it pointed out that same-sex behavior is not an abnormality. Same-sex behavior is found in hundreds and hundreds of different species. It's not that uncommon. And yet, when you talk about these prejudices, or you run across issues with these prejudices in our society today, issues that are sadly often taken up violently or imposed violently, what do we use to move away from being this away? And so I say education. Now consider this. During the era of the civil rights marches, during the revolution, if you will, that is so often holds up Martin Luther King as the pivotal figure, and he was a very pivotal figure. The way in which these actions went down resulted in laws that were supposed to protect civil rights. It resulted in regulations. It resulted in initiatives. And all of these things were supposed to be put in place to try to root out racism and to break the hold of racist belief and thought and practice on many of our citizens. Well, you don't change minds by passing laws. You know, a lot of people just say, oh, well, there ought to be a law. Well, you know what? That's fine. Go ahead, get a law. Write it on a piece of paper. Knock yourself out. Even if you get it put into print and ratified by Congress and signed off by the presidency, and it's an actual law, if nobody enforces it, if nobody believes in it, then it's just words on paper. I remember feeling that our society had advanced greatly. The era of political correctness, many of the overt racial behaviors were shamefully carried out in the shadows. It seemed like the ultimate expression of there having actually been some significant victory over the existence of racism was Barack Obama being elected president. And a spark was lit to a fuse, and America has gradually been burning down ever since. Because the victory that I had somehow convinced myself, and I think a lot of other people had convinced themselves that had been won, was not really a victory. The fire was not put out. The overt flames had been tamped down. And overt racism was just, oh, you can't do that, you can't say that. But you look at what's going on today, and, well, I tell you what, this old white man got it wrong. That shouldn't be a surprise. We didn't really win any victory. No victory was won. The racism that was born after 400 years, ago, the first African slaves were brought to the United States. Fear, brutality, angers, resentments. I mean, you've got to convince yourself of some pretty terrible things to feel justified in owning another human being. Hanging them, beating them, torturing them, using them for your own gratification. What do you teach yourself to be able to live with that? I can't even imagine. But I feel like that's a lot of the root of racism. Now let me offer a counterpoint to this. Think of very young children. Think of a daycare center. You throw a bunch of kids together, you know what? They don't care that their hair looks different or their skin looks different. Small children are innately kind and accepting. They're generous by nature. They're accepting by nature. They are the purest representation of what should be the goal of an adult, and that is to care one for the other. So if all children are born this way, if this is how we all got started, how do you end up with that horrible human being who knelt on a man's neck for nearly 9 minutes and casually murdered him? How do you end up with that? It's not something you're going to see in a kindergarten. And you end up with it because, like the society I was raised in, it's being taught at home. I mean, not overtly taught like lectures and things like that necessarily. I don't ever remember being lectured in racist dogma. And yet somehow I found, the more I've looked at my life and the more years I've passed, I've absorbed a great deal of it, and it'll never totally go away. I tried not to pass any of it on to my children. I hope things are better. I believe they are. And that points out the fact that these hatreds, these fears, these beliefs, these behaviors, these attitudes, they are taught in our homes, and they are taught to our children, and they are taught by us. They will not be taken away by renaming military bases. They will not be taken away by removing statues. Passing laws won't make this go away. What is needed to make it go away, in my opinion, is to open a window on the reality and the extent and the truth of the history of the United States of America. We need to teach the massacre of the entire black community in Oklahoma. We need to teach the horrific things that were done in the Philippines, the waterboarding, the rapes, the murders. An American Army general issued an order to his troop in the Philippines to go into a region to quell the population, and that order was to summarily execute every male above the age of 10, simply for being alive, being a native Filipino, and being that old. And the troops carried it out. There are a lot of horrific things we've done to the Native Americans, things we've done to the population that we brought into this country as slaves against their will, things we have done in other countries. The educational system is the tool to open a window on the reality of the negative things that are part of our history, and it is only by exposing our children at an early age to some of these negative things and letting them speak out and say, that's not right, that's not fair, that's mean, why would anybody do that? To engage the innate goodness that was born into all of us using the educational system. Now, I know there's a lot of people that would be horrified at this idea, but I can't think of another platform or another venue that can reach literally into the homes of all of the homes in this country. Because if we don't find a way to introduce a counter view and a counter message into the homes that perpetuate racism, sexism, homophobia, if we can't get the message in there, if we can't get the picture to the children at an age where they can at least see and say, oh, that's not right, that's not fair, we'll never make it go away. I don't think we can ever make it totally go away, but we can at least reduce it. We can at least mitigate it, slow it down, give a counterpoint. Now, I know this is very idealistically thinking, and I think probably a lot of you will say, well, gee, it's a nice idea. But the thing is, it really is an idea, and I really would like you to keep it in mind and consider it. Please feel free to share the video. Friends and neighbors, maybe it'll be entertaining, maybe it'll be educational, maybe it'll be thought-provoking. That's really what I'm shooting for. Folks, we're better than this. We were all born better than this. And it's how we are educated, not just in our homes, but in our school systems, that have an influence on how ultimately we end up growing. Thank you for listening. We'll see you again in a week.